Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are continuing a series that I have been doing quite frequently on this channel, and that is going through every team in the NBA lottery and talking about what I think they should do with their first round draft pick. We've done the Timberwolves, the Warriors, the Hornets, the Bulls, and today we're on to the team with the 5th overall pick, and that would be the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a team that I really hate the position they're in, and I don't see what direction this franchise is going in. It seemed like they were rebuilding, and then they made this random trade for Andre Drummond, who just doesn't fit the roster one bit. There's zero defense on this team. I just don't know what they are doing, and that makes it really hard to make decisions on what I think they should do in the draft. However, I do think that I have laid out some good possibilities for what I think they should do, and let's get right into it. I will preface this by saying that I think the Cavs should take whoever is the best available person with the 5th pick. They have Colin Sexton, they have Darius Garland, they have Kevin Porter Jr. Those are really their only young pieces. You could say Dylan Windler was a first-round pick last year and he was injured this year, but I don't see him becoming much more than a spot-up shooter. So, this team really is in a weird spot. They have a backcourt that they like in the Sexland group with Colin Sexton and Darius Garland, obviously. I'm not a big Garland fan. I didn't like what we saw from him in his rookie year, but I do think that Sexton's ability as a scorer will translate to him becoming a solid lead guard in the NBA. Not a superstar, but maybe someone that can be an all-star in some random year and overall just be a solid guy who can get you some buckets on the offensive end of the floor. Outside of him, Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be a solid player. Kevin Love doesn't seem like a long-term piece. Drummond doesn't seem like a long-term piece, although actually Kevin Love might have to be because his contract is going to continue for the next 3 seasons, so unless they can trade him, he's going to be on this team for a while. They're in a weird spot, like I said, and there's not going to be a whole lot in this draft that can fix the Cavs, but the first thing I would do if I were them is hope that James Wiseman falls to you at 5. I do think that this is a possibility. I don't think it's likely. I view Wiseman as the second best player in the draft, and the Cavaliers are actually the rare team. I'd rather see them take Wiseman than I would LaMelo Ball, just because Wiseman is the defensive anchor they need. Drummond is certainly not that, as he's a porous defender. They have poor guard defenders in Garland and Sexton. Kevin Love is a minus defender. Wiseman has Defensive Player of the Year potential, and he can be your anchor in the paint. I love what I see from him on the defensive end of the floor. I think he's got all the potential in the world to maybe reach a Rudy Gobert type ceiling on the defensive end of the floor. Maybe not quite to that extent, but I do think that he can be a fantastic player on defense. So he would be an answer to their biggest problem, and he's also a guy who has potential to become a really solid center overall. So if I were the Cavaliers, I would hope Wiseman would be on the board. However, he probably won't be, and neither will be the guy I would second most want to see them draft, and that's the guy I view as the best player in this draft, LaMelo Ball. I think that LaMelo's playmaking is going to translate. I think that his shooting is going to improve. I think his defense is going to improve, and he's going to wind up being a really, really good NBA player. But I don't like the fit with the Cavs because they already have 2 young guards. Where are they going to find minutes for him unless they're trading Garland? And like I said before, I don't like Garland, but I also don't think you want to move on from him, especially because you would be getting pennies on the dollar as his rookie season was not good, and you're not going to get the return that you would want for a guy you drafted with the 5th overall pick just last season. So I do think that I'd rather see them draft Wiseman than Ball, but anyone else, I would like to see them take LaMelo Ball. And if that means they have to trade Darius Garland and get a lesser return than you would want for him, so be it. LaMelo has enough higher potential than anyone else in this draft, and clearly higher potential than Darius Garland does, that I would be willing to take that risk of trading Garland. My third choice for them would be drafting Deni Avdija from Israel, Maccabi Tel Aviv. Deni is a guy who's going to be a really good playmaking forward. His shot is not great, especially Uh, that is emphasized with his free throw shooting being poor. I think he was a 58% shooter this year. And usually that's an indicator of how well a guy can shoot in the NBA. And that does make me nervous about Denny, but his form looks really good, so I am going to bank on his shot becoming better. He's a guy that I have faith in. I think that his role in the NBA is going to be very interesting, and the Cavs could be a perfect fit for him with two guards that score the ball quite a bit. He could become that playmaker in their offense who is looking to pass first instead of score first, which you really need if you're going to have a backcourt that's mostly focused on scoring. Obviously, he would bring a lot of defensive questions, and he also does overlap with one of the guys who is one of their better young players in Michael Porter, or not Michael Porter Jr. They wish they had Michael Porter Jr. I hope I wasn't saying Michael Porter Jr. all along. Kevin Porter Jr. Oh, geez. If I've been saying Michael Porter, I am very sorry. Kevin Porter Jr. is who I meant. Why do there have to be two Porter Jr.'s in the NBA? Is Kevin Porter Jr. a junior? I'm pretty sure he is. Well, why do there have to be two Porters that are young guys, play small forward, and score the ball better than anything else in their game? Come on, that's just not fair to me. I'm going to mix them up. Anyways, back to Denny, though. I do think that he would be the third best option, and I would take him over Anthony Edwards if either of the Cavs. That might be a bit controversial, but I just think that his playmaking ability would be a bigger boost to them than Edwards' potential as a scorer, especially since I view the two as pretty close, much closer than I think most talent evaluators do. I don't think that Edwards is on the same tier as Ball and Wiseman. I view him as in the next tier with guys like Deni Avdija, Onyeka Okongwu, Killian Hayes. But that is why I would take Denny here over a guy like Anthony Edwards. Onyeka Okongwu would be my fourth pick. Another guy I would take over Edwards, surprising as it may be, but similar with Wiseman, Okongwu can be a good defensive big man for you, which is what you really need if you're the Cavs, considering the weakness they have in the rest of their young core. Adding a guy like Onyeka Okongwu can be a plus defender and also has shown some ability in the post. That could be a really good idea for them. I also really do like Okongwu. For a while, I thought he was better than Wiseman, but after reviewing some of the tape more on Wiseman and realizing what a defensive beast he is, I'm higher on Wiseman at this point. But I do think that Okongwu can be a very good player in the NBA, especially on the defensive end of the floor. I don't think he has the same all-defensive team potential as Wiseman does, which is why I am lower on Okongwu. But I also think that his jump shot has more potential than Wiseman's, and I do think that he's going to end up being a very solid starting center in the NBA, and that's why I would really consider him if I were the Cavs and he was still on the board. I see a lot of people saying that the Cavs would draft Isaac Okoro over him, and I would absolutely advise against that because Okoro is a perimeter player where you need shooting in order to exist as a perimeter player in the NBA. That makes me really dislike Okoro, and I don't feel like he's going to be the type of guy you would want to take with the fifth pick. And while Okongwu doesn't have a jump shot either, he's not a perimeter player, so I don't think it's as big of a deal. Next option would be draft Anthony Edwards. A lot of people would have him much higher on a potential board for the Cavs, but I just think that his overlap as a score-first guard with Colin Sexton and Darius Garland is too much, and I would not like to see the Cavs take him. It would not be a good situation for Anthony, as he wouldn't get as many touches as you would absolutely love him to. I don't think it would be good for Sexton and Garland, as it's another poor defensive guard and another guy who's going to look to score the ball first. This is not a guy I think that the Cavs should draft. Another inefficient guard is not the move for them. However, if he's on the board here and you don't like any of the other guys that I listed, or all four of those other guys are off the board, because, I mean, there is a world where LaMelo goes with the first pick, Wiseman goes with the second pick, Okongwu goes to the Hornets with the third pick, and Denny goes to the Bulls with the fourth pick. I do think that's possible. So maybe if Edwards is here and you like him better than the idea of trading up or down, or better than the idea of taking Okoro, which I do. I would much rather have Edwards than Okoro. You like him better than Obi Toppin? I do once again. then he might be the pick, even if it's an odd fit. If none of those 5 guys are there, those 5 guys being Wiseman, Ball, Avdia, Okongwu, and Edwards, at that point I think the Cavs should really look to trade up. They need someone to build around. Actually, that's what I have in my notes, but I think Colin Sexton is the guy that they're building around. Maybe he's not a superstar, but on the offensive end of the floor, at least, he can be your leading scorer, and I think you'll be okay. So I'd actually rather see them trade down than I would see them trade up. Maybe you can get a deal like the 8th pick, the 27th pick, and Frank Ntilikina from the Knicks if they want to hop over the Pistons, hop over the Hawks, and take their point guard of choice between Tyrese Halliburton and Killian Hayes. I think that is a possibility. And if you're the Cavs, that would be nice because you're adding Ntilikina into your defense or your backcourt rotation, and he's an excellent defender in the backcourt, as we all know. He could be the answer to their problems there if you're playing him alongside Sexton and Garland. They also get the 8th pick where they could draft a good defender. Like, at that point, I would be okay with Okoro. At that point, I would really like Devin Vassell, and I'd rather see Vassell than Okoro. Actually, to this team, I think I'd rather see Okoro than Vassell just because of Okoro's higher all-star potential. But in general, I like Vassell better. But Vassell. I always do this every video, so I apologize. But I would rather see them take Okoro if they trade down to the 8th pick. And with the 27th pick, they could add another plus defender like Xavier Tillman if they want a forward / center. Malachi Flynn or someone like that if you want a guard. Or if you want a wing, Desmond Bane type could be available there. Robert Woodard could be available there. So there would be some options if they make that trade down. With the Knicks, otherwise something like Kelly Oubre in the 10th pick for Dylan Windler in the 5th pick. Oubre could be a really nice wing for them moving forward. And they also get the 10th pick where they could draft someone like Vassell or maybe Sadiq Bey. Maybe at that point you do just take Obi Toppin. And you also do get Kelly Oubre, who is a really good NBA wing and someone that could be a solid piece of their young core moving forward as a guy who can give you 20 points per game and play solid defense. Heck yeah. You're obviously giving up Windler and you're moving down in the draft, but like I said, I don't think Windler becomes much more than a spot-up shooter. So if you can get the Suns to do this deal, that's great. Maybe you trade down with the Kings and do something like Buddy Hield in 12 for Drummond in 5. That's a deal that I would strongly consider if I were Sacramento. It might seem like going from Hield to Drummond is too big of a downgrade, but you're moving up 7 spots in the draft, and Drummond's huge contract is not great, but it's expiring, and that means you have cap space in the summer of 2021, and everybody wants cap space in the summer of 2021, and you move off the Buddy Hield contract. That's a very enticing offer if I'm Sacramento, and I would agree to it. I would very much advise against Cleveland doing this because I think that Buddy Hield contract is a negative. But maybe they just want that shooter. Maybe that's the guy they think they should pair with Colin and Darius in the backcourt. I don't like it, but I think it's a possibility, and I think the Kings would jump all over that. Finally, this is a trade I talked about the Bulls doing yesterday. It would be the 14th pick, the 30th pick, and Romeo Langford in exchange for the 5th pick. The 14th pick would be a chance for the Cavs to grab a wing or maybe Precious Achiuwa as a big guy and add to their defensive capabilities, or maybe start their defensive capabilities because, as I said before, there is very small amount of defense on this team. Romeo Langford can be a solid wing for them moving forward, and with the 30th pick, you can get a rotational guy for the future. Probably you're looking at another big. A guy I would love there would be Zeke Naji. I think Zeke Naji is going to be a very good NBA player. I view him as a future 4 guy who's shown that he can, well, he hasn't shown it in game, but from what I've heard, he can shoot the ball a bit. I think that he's going to be a very switchable big guy who can guard on the perimeter. I think that Zeke Naji is going to be a very good player. So with the 30th pick, if you can bring in him let's say you draft Sadiq Bey with the 14th pick and bring in Romeo Langford, that is definitely bolstering your wing group. If they don't trade down, I could see them trading up for like something like Kevin Porter Jr. in the 5th pick for the 1st pick with the Cavs. And in that case, you're probably drafting Wiseman. I mean, trading up just doesn't make sense. Like, maybe it's Drummond in 5 for 2 and Wiggins. But at that point, you're probably drafting Wiseman. And you've got, like, Drummond, Wiggins, Love, Garland, and Sexton. Or Wiseman, not Drummond. I don't know. Oh, I'm a mess in this video. I'm all over the place. I apologize. But that's possible. I think that would be a big win for the Cavs. I don't know that the Warriors would want to do that. Well, maybe bringing in Drummond, who can function as a guy who can play the 5 for you in big minutes, grab a bunch of rebounds and throw down some lobs, while also getting rid of the Wiggins contract, which is 2 years longer than the job. Okay. You do move down 3 spots. Okay, I'm starting to come around to that trade. Maybe both teams do want to do that. In the Warriors draft Isaac Okoro or Obi Toppin or someone like that with the 5th pick. Maybe it's Onyeka Okongwu. Okay, I'm starting to like that idea. Otherwise, like Drummond in 5 for Nicholas Batum in 3 with Charlotte. Charlotte would do this because they want a center, and James Wiseman isn't available. So they swap down and get their center, and then they draft, like, I guess they'd be at 5. So you're drafting probably like Okoro or Obi Toppin or somebody like that, maybe Killian Hayes. And the Cavaliers at 3 are taking... Actually, that trade doesn't make a lot of sense. You'd only do that if Wiseman was available. If you're Cleveland, and if you're Charlotte, why not just take Wiseman? Why trade for Drummond? So scratch that one. But I do like the Drummond in 5 for 2 and Wiggins idea. That one is a solid idea in my mind. And the Kevin Porter Jr. in 5 for 1, I think that's just too big of an overpay, and I wouldn't want to do that if I were the Cavs. I wouldn't want to give up Kevin Porter Jr. in the 5th pick just to draft LaMelo Ball. I think that I'd rather have Kevin Porter Jr. and Deni Avdija than I would LaMelo. So, if they're going to trade their pick, I'd like to see them trade down. If they don't draft any of the 5 guys I outlined at the beginning, or trade down, or trade up, I'd like to, I guess, Okoro does have that potential, because if he can develop his shot, he'll be a very well-rounded player and a very good NBA guy. I don't like him because I don't think he can shoot, and I think he's the next Jarrett Culver, but if you do like him, and you think you can fix his jump shot, and you're the Cavs, he might be the perfect guy to pair alongside Colin Sexton as a great defender, and a guy with a lot of potential to be a very good NBA player. So I would rather see them take Okoro than Vassell, but Vassell would be another solid option at 5. I'd rather see them trade down and take Vassell, because I really don't think that anyone in... Well, maybe the Hawks would take him at 6. So maybe you do have to take him at 5 if he's still there. Killian Hayes and Obi Toppin are other ideas, but I just think they have too much overlap. Hayes with their young backcourt of Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, and Toppin with Kevin Love. And in general, I don't like Obi Toppin. I think he ends up being a bench player in the NBA due to his defensive lacking, and overall, he's great offensively, but the defense just isn't enough. Like, he's so athletic, and he can shoot the ball, and that's all exciting, but I just think he ends up being a bench piece as a guy who can score the ball off the bench. Kind of a spark plug, which is different for a forward. Not a whole lot of comparisons for him, but he also would overlap with Kevin Love, and Love's contract is not great, so I don't think that they're going to end up trading it. Yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section below what you think the Cavs should do with their pick. Overall, I'd say the most likely scenario is that they end up drafting Deni Avdija or Onyeka Okongwu, because I don't think that Ball or Wiseman will be available, and I do think that Avdija and Okongwu would be the next best options for them if those 2 guys aren't there. But let me know in the comment section below what you would do if you were the Cavs general manager. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. That's it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.